Hey, this is Kelly Phillips, the WP plugin coach with our live plugin review of Webinar Ignition. So we are just getting started here. I'm going to give it just a minute or so for folks to jump on, as there's always a few coming in late or having trouble loading the video. You should be seeing a screen right now that has my picture. Hello. And in a minute, you will see me live. And you're going to see everything I'm doing behind the scenes here in just a minute, because there is quite a lot going on. I feel a little bit like I'm running a starship. But I will show you my setup as we get moving into the webinar. So welcome, welcome, welcome. All right. All right. You can hear my voice on my other computer. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Thanks so much for coming, everybody. I'm very happy to have you here. This is my first live plugin review. I'm going to tell you just a tiny little bit about me, but this is mostly going to be about the plugin. My name is Kelly Phillips, and I started Plugin Coach last year because I teach WordPress, and I found that people really struggled with plugins, like what plugin to use, what's good for what, how to use it, how to fix it if it breaks. And so I started Plugin Coach just to help people understand, what's a good plugin and help solve some of those problems. So even from the beginning, I had this idea that I wanted to do some live plugin reviews because seeing it in work, seeing it actually happen in front of you is a lot of times much easier than having it in a blog post or just with screenshots, something like that. So this has been a dream of mine. Thanks for coming to my very first one. And it's very fitting because I chose to do a webinar plugin, and it's the very plugin that I'm actually using to give this webinar. So thought it was really good. Just one more thing I want to get out of the way before we dive right into the webinar plugin, though. So, so you got to be on the right screen to flip. There we go. So there's the same picture of me, just a little different. And I just want to make it really clear that my job is to review WordPress plugins. So I don't sell them. It probably sounds like I'm selling plugins a lot just because I only review plugins that I recommend. So that could change in the future, but right now there's a lot of reasons that I don't review plugins that I don't like. Part of it is because a lot of the problems when a plugin first comes out get resolved in the first couple of months. And if I do a bad review on a plugin and then they fix all those issues and I don't see it or I don't get to go back and change the review, it gets out of date really quickly. Whereas once a plugin is doing really well and is well supported, it tends to stay that way. And so right now, at least, I'm only sticking with plugins I recommend. Now, I only become an affiliate for plugins that I use myself and love. So there are a lot of plugin reviews on my website at wpplugincoach.com. They all have links. Most of those are not affiliate links because I only believe in partnering up with things that I am keeping a pulse on. So if a plugin does start to go bad or has a problem, I'm able to help people with that. So there are maybe 4, I guess, that I'm an affiliate for, and Webinar Ignition is one of them because I have adored this plugin. So another reason why I wanted to choose it for my first live plugin review. All right, I am going to flip off the screen sharing here so you can actually see my face. I think it's always better to see faces if you can. There we are. There we are. Hey, everybody. So I think that we could start with, why do you need a webinar plugin, and how is a webinar plugin different from a webinar service? Because that's one of the questions you're going to want to ask yourself if you're in the market. And I'm assuming since you're here at this review, you're in the market for a webinar plugin or a webinar service. So there are services out there like GoToWebinar and WebEx that are full packaged webinar services. And when you start those, you actually connect into the servers at the webinar company and everything is run through there. So like I do use WebEx for when I do one-on-one coaching, because you can hire me for just blocks of time to help you through any little issues. And I use WebEx for that. And the reason I would use WebEx versus a webinar plugin is because WebEx allows you to have two-way conversation. It allows me to see my user screen and even take over their computer if I have to help them out, which is really nice and saves a lot of frustration when you're teaching. But for a webinar like this, where you're on and I can't hear you, it's one way that you can hear me. Now we do have, flip over to my other one, we do have some live chat going on. If you guys would, let's make sure that's working. Why don't you type in the live chat, tell me where you're at right now. Let's figure out where everybody is. I am in Raleigh, North Carolina. And you may see that there's a little bit of a delay. We're going to talk about that too when we get into the plugin a little bit more. So in a minute or about 45 seconds, you should start seeing people typing in where they're from. Or you might see them typing it in a little bit earlier than you because of the delay issues, but we'll get to those. Okay, so go ahead and type those in. I'm going to keep going, and when I see them pop up, I'll let you know, unless I don't see them pop up, in which case we may have a problem with the plugin. Go figure. So that's why you would use a webinar hangout or a webinar plugin like this versus using one of those services. Now there's another realm of webinar services that are also the one way. There's the GoToWebinars, there's the Easy Webinar, Webinar GM. Some of those have WordPress plugins as well, but they are also more on the service-based, where I believe a lot of what you do is actually on the servers of the company. Now, I don't have any of those. Oh, I see some Floridas. That's awesome. Excellent. I see in North Carolina. Hello. There we go. See, there's that little bit of delay that pops in. Okay, excellent. It's good to have you guys. Thanks for coming. So, so those services, you still have to connect into a service. So like the GoToWebinars and the webinar jams and all that. Now I've used GoToWebinar. I've not used some of the other ones, so I can't give you a play-by-play comparison. But I will tell you how Webinar Ignition is a little different. Webinar Ignition is actually a WordPress plugin. So this webinar that we're on right now, you're going to see behind the scenes of it here in a second and look at the interface, and I'll tell you all the things that I have to do to run this baby. It's different because everything happens on your website except for a couple of things. So the plugin itself is here on your website, and the setup of the webinar, the emails that go out, all those kind of things that make a webinar happen right from your WordPress website. You're not connecting in, the emails aren't being sent from a Webinar Ignition main server. It's all going through your website. So that can have pluses and minuses. The other things that happen with this is right now we're actually on a Google Hangout on Air. And so the Google Hangout on Air it's embedded in my website, and it's being streamed out through Webinar Ignition, but it's going straight from Google to me, just like it would even if I was just using a plain old Hangout. The difference is the plugin is wrapping the webinar features around the Google Hangout. And then the other third piece that is, sorry, I see, looking at the comments makes me lose my train of thoughts. The comments is actually the third piece, the part that is also a third-party service. It is being brought in by, I'm using Livefire. You can actually use different third-party comment services, and I'm going to show you what your options are, because there is a built-in part of Webinar Ignition where you can take questions. But if you want the live chat like what we have today, you do have to have a third party. So that's the difference, is that a lot more of it is happening on your website, which, there's still a chance things will go wrong, but I think it's probably a smaller chance than if you're using a third-party service. I've been doing webinars with third-party services my entire 20-year career through corporate, and so I know how things go wrong with third-party services. So I'm going to give you an example of something that went wrong earlier this week with Webinar Ignition so you can kind of get a feel for what the difference is. All right. Okay, we've got somebody who has a question. So there's 2 views already. If you open up the link from the email, it shows your initial photo. But if you've clicked on be part of the conversation, Google Hangouts on air and link them, I'm seeing your screen share. So here's one of the things, and I've noticed this on somebody's webinar the other day. It's actually a Google Hangout issue, I believe. You may have to refresh the screen in order to see me. Like if somebody is not seeing me right now, let me see if I can write this in the chat for them, because if they aren't seeing me right now, they can't hear me. So this would be an issue, not just with this plugin, but it's more of a Google issue, because the person that I saw this with last week was not using Webinar Ignition. So you may have to refresh the live webinar page in order to see the Hangout or the webinar start to move. So I just typed that in. Let's go ahead and post it. This is why having a control person, I don't have any control person backing me up. If I had kind of a person behind me, they could answer these questions for me. So let me get that going. I have 2 computers going. You'll see my setup here in a sec. Actually, if somebody would type that in for me. Okay, here we go. Now I think it's logging me in. See, tech stuff. So that comment should show up in your live fire comments here in just a second. So I'm going to show you my setup. You'll see I have 3 screens going on. I actually have 2 computers. You don't have to have 2 computers to do this stuff, but it does help. Okay, if somebody could type for me, if you're not seeing this, could someone type in the live comments for me that they need to refresh their screen in order to see me in the live webinar screen? That would be awesome. Thank you so much for doing that, you guys. Okay, so I want to move on with the actual plugin. So some of the things, so the next question that I always get is, well, can't I just use a Google Hangout by itself? And the answer is absolutely yes. You can just use a Google Hangout by itself and do a live stream show or a webinar, and you have all the same features because we're actually using the Google Hangout ourselves. But what the webinar plugin will do and what Webinar Ignition will do is it wraps features around the Hangout. So if you're just doing a Hangout show by yourself, you can't collect email addresses. You can't email people directly. Now you can send out a message to everybody who has signed up. Thank you, David Vaughn, for posting that on the chat. You can send out an email to everybody who is signed up, but you know, you can't, like, you don't have their email, you just are connected to them on the social platform. And we all know how dangerous that can be when you've built up your following on a social platform and something happens, your page is gone, you lose your followers, and then all those connections are just gone. And so having a way to get people who are viewing your show onto an email list can be a huge, huge benefit. Things like paid webinars are a little more difficult with Google Hangouts, and you can do them if you can embed them behind a password, like in a WordPress site, but it's a little more work, whereas a webinar software is going to do that automatically for you. Also, there's some sales tools I'm going to show you and experiment with a little bit that help you with conversions and some conversion tracking so that you don't have to guess if the sales that you generated were generated from your webinar. They could, you know, because you've got the clicks and you know when they clicked and exactly what they clicked on. So those are some of the reasons you might want to invest in a webinar plugin. So let's go ahead. I'm going to share my screen. And okay, thanks, David. Her comments didn't show. So, okay, excellent. So I'm going to go ahead. Let me bring this over and I'm going to share the screen so you can actually see the Webinar Ignition interface itself. And I'm going to walk through how it works first. So I'm going to walk through how it works first because I think that's most of what you guys want to know. And then I'm going to show you some of the display options and selling options. You'll actually get to see your screen change as we do this. And then I'll talk a little bit about the setup, which is the most boring part, but often the most frustrating part. So I'm going to do it a little backwards based on, I think, what's most exciting. All right, so let me go ahead and share this screen. Please go ahead and type in yeah, type in the comments as they come. That's right. My comment didn't come in. I actually didn't log into Livefire on the computer where I tried to type that, and that's why it didn't come through. So that would be like an operator mistake versus a mistake of the plugin. All right, let me go ahead and share. Okay, go ahead and type if you would in the stream. Thanks, David. Go ahead and type in the stream if you would that you can see the actual webinar ignition screen. It's like the black screen with the WordPress around it. And Steve, if you can hear me now, it is a Google Hangouts issue. And well, it's actually because it's an operator issue. My comments, yeah, you just got it. I think my comments didn't show because they didn't log in. Okay, see, that's the delay. So let's talk about the delay for a second before I go on with the webinar ignition screen. The delay is a Google Hangout thing. It has like a 40-second delay, and it could be even more of a delay. If people come on your Hangout late, at a certain point, the Hangout will start in the middle, but if they come just a little late, they'll be behind even more. So it's potentially you could have people that are at different spots in the webinar and answering questions in the chat at different moments, and people will get confused. So thank you, Lisa. Thank you, David. Thank you, Steve. Or Steph, sorry. So that can be a little bit confusing when you're using a Google Hangout webinar versus using a webinar service where everything is tied in together and everybody's seeing the exact same thing at the exact same time. Okay, so this screen that we're looking at right now is the main screen for Webinar Ignition inside my WordPress website. And you can see that I have 4 webinars that I've left in here for you to look at. You get a little bit of information here. You get the name, the date that you gave the webinar, and then you get the total number of registrants. So I had 311 on this guy. 10 for this one that was more of a private group, 29, and then 49 today. So that's not how many people are actually on the webinar right now. We're going to be able to see that in a minute, but that's how many people went through the registration process for the webinar. If I wanted to create a brand new one, I would do it from here. And I'm going to show you a lot of the main features. We aren't going to be able to get to every single feature because it would take more than an hour. I would say setting up a brand new webinar and doing all of the little details, and it probably takes me a half hour to 40 minutes, but that's also like copywriting, loading in pictures, changing all the emails. There's a lot of little details that would go into that 40 minutes. It's actually a pretty easy process, I think. All right, so I'm not going to create a brand new one. I'm going to go into this very webinar we're on and show you all the backgrounds. Now, one of the things I did when I set up this webinar is I did not customize anything. So the webinar pages don't really look that great because I just wanted you to box what you get, and then I'll talk to you about how you can make them look better on your webinar. All right, so this is the main control area. And when you first set up your webinar, you fill in things like the title of the webinar, the host, the date, etc. And all of that translates down through all the other pages that are made. So this is like the main info right here. Across the top, we have where you modify the different pages that you're going to need for your webinar. So I think what we'll do is just walk right through these to the side. Now you can change this information once you set up the webinar. You can change the title, you can change the times and all of that. I had to do that, and the only thing that wouldn't change is if you've already passed out the event URL, you just want to make sure that you don't change this part. So you can change the title of the webinar and not change the event URL, which is really nice because if you get feedback from people that how to tweak it so you get more registrations, you can go ahead and change it without forcing the URL to change. Okay. All right, so let's talk about templates. There are only 3 design templates that come with Webinar Ignition. Now that was kind of disappointing to me at first because I've seen some very nice webinar pages and I've seen some not so nice webinar pages. These are not terrible templates. They're pretty standard. It's kind of like the one you signed up for here. Like I said, I didn't do anything to dress it up. I just put it out of the box. You can, however, integrate with Optimized Press or Lead Pages and potentially some other things as well to create completely custom webinar pages that look like anything you want. Webinar Ignition comes with short code and you can place code in different places. So you're not just stuck with these 3, but they're not going to be done for you. So I think that's important because if you're not a website person and you need something to be done for you, this could be a reason that you might hesitate. Okay, so once you pick the template, then you move on to the registration page. So this is the first thing that you set up. And you can have a banner at the top. So that's how you can modify those templates without having to do any kind of like technical stuff. So if I hit show banner area, it allows me to choose a different banner background color, and this would just be the area across the top of the registration page. So I can modify background colors. I can put in background images or banner images. I've done that on a webinar before, and it works pretty good, and it even gives you the sizing that you need. So you can do tweaks to those templates to a certain point inside this. So I'm gonna go ahead and close this and move on. So you can add an image banner across the top. You can modify the background of those templates. So you can do it with color. You can do it with a repeating background image. So that's kind of nice. And this just uses the normal WordPress image library. You have some social sharing settings. This is really important. And I don't know if you guys know, but I'm a big SEO person. And to me, part of SEO is the social share. If somebody's going to share your page, it needs to look right. It needs to look good or people aren't going to want to click on it. And so all of that is built in right here. You don't need an extra plugin for the SEO for these pages. It gives a standard main headline, and I left mine the way it was generated. I probably normally would change this, but introducing this exclusive webinar from Kelly Phillips, the WP plugin coach. So it pulls all of that from my initial settings that I entered in, but you can change it. It's got your normal WordPress interface. You can insert images. So, even though those templates are basic, you have a lot of built-in options. If you want to spend the time, you can definitely customize them for yourself. And I am keeping an eye on the chat. So if you guys have any questions, let me know. Okay. All right. So this is the call to action area. And this is, let me see if I can, let me launch up our registration page so you can see it. So this is the registration page and what it looked like. The call to action area is this area right here. You can have a video here or you can have an image here. I've done both, works flawlessly. But your settings there are pretty simple. You can change the background color of that area. You can show the image or the video. And you would just put it on YouTube would be your most likely thing. If you have a Vimeo account or something, you can use that as well. You just grab the embed code and pop it in here underneath show video. And that's how you get a video in this square instead of an image. So pretty simple. And then we get to sales copy, everybody's favorite stuff. So again, you have your basic options. You can change your headline and your colors. One of the things I liked about Webinar Ignition is that if I choose not to type anything in this field for the copy headline, it does put a sample headline there that would make sense. There's a lot of settings here, and if you do skip one, it's like they kind of put a default in there that will not make you look too terrible. So your main sales copy area, again, it's just your WordPress interface. So you can put in images, you can put in links, whatever you like. You can see I just have mainly text with some images, and this space shows up down here. So that's where the sales copy comes in. I kind of don't like it down there. I think I would want it a little higher, but I don't know. I just haven't designed my own pages yet. I use Optimized Press, so probably for future webinars, I will be customizing an Optimized Press page for this stuff. Opt-in headline, I didn't even put one in, but it's showing on above the webinar date. Reserve your spot is the opt-in headline. Okay, we've got a question from Teach Good Stuff. Hey there. Can you make a copy of webinars and templates if you plan on doing a similar webinar each month? I don't want to go through the process over and over again with changing the look. Yes, you absolutely can. And that's a pretty common question. When you create a brand new webinar, there is a drop-down box and it will give you the option to clone any webinar that you've already done. So you don't have to redo all of this work, which is really nice. We've got the webinar date and host info. I'm not going to spend the time to dump into those because they're pretty standard, just fields. You can do paid webinars with Webinar Ignition. I have not done one yet, but it gives you some extra options here. And everybody gets a secret code that verifies that the person who paid is supposed to be there. So that's really nice. Keeps it a little more secure. So I will be trying one of these. If I find out there's more information that you guys want to know, I'll go ahead and put it out there for you, probably in blog post format. But the ability to do paid webinars, I think, is very, very important in a tool, because even if you don't have paid webinars at this moment that you can think of, once you get doing webinars, you're probably going to want to. Webinars are a little addictive, I got to tell you. The first time I did the webinar for my own business versus doing it for a corporation, I was on cloud nine like the whole day. It just, it lets you engage with people. It lets you get out there in a way that blog posts just don't do. So yeah, it's a little addictive. I don't say I didn't warn you. All right. Facebook Connect button. I have not connected this, but you can send the webinar out to Facebook and have comments on it and things like that. I have MailChimp is what I use. And so this is interesting how this works. When someone signs up for the webinar, they get logged here in Webinar Ignition, and you guys will see that when we get to that point. But you can also have them automatically get added to a list in MailChimp. So the way that I have chosen to set this up, MailChimp doesn't allow people to opt into more than one list at a time. It's one of the big limitations of MailChimp that I get frustrated with. So I have a special list that people who sign up for my webinar, once they sign up, they go to that list, they get a confirmation, because I want you to confirm. Like, I don't want anyone on my list who doesn't want to be there. I just, so you get a confirmation email. And if you confirm it, you go onto my webinar mailing list. And then after a webinar, I'll pull you into the plugin coach or into my Boost Interactive Media list if that's where the webinar was originally pulled out of. So I do pull people into a separate list, and then I transfer them over to the list that they asked to be on. So that's a little work, but depending on who you're using, like if you're using Infusionsoft, you're not going to have those issues. I'm just on MailChimp, so I have to do it manually or set up a Zap from Zapier to do it. Okay. What you do is you go into your mailing list, you just grab the normal code. This is the same code I would paste right into my website page if I were putting the form on my website page. And Webinar Ignition pulls out the pertinent information and allows you to match up the appropriate fields. So that was flawless for me every time I've done it. Super easy. And then you can adjust kind of the opt-in messages and the thank you URL and all that good stuff. So that's it for the registration page. If you have any questions, go ahead and pop them in. Oh, I see a question from Lisa. What about button styling options? It does have down here for these buttons, it has some options. The CSS button allows you to change colors and things like that. And then the custom image button would allow you to create your own image and upload it. So you could do pretty much anything you want with that. I'm actually amazed at all the little things this plugin does. I'll be honest, I did not expect it to be this full featured. I really didn't. And there are drawbacks, which I'm going to go over too. Okay, thank you page. If I preview the thank you page, you guys probably all saw this. This is, again, very basic. I would dress this up a little bit in the future because I just would love to have a little more personality. But you can customize all of these messages. I had an issue earlier this week, and this is one of the drawbacks of using a plugin versus a service. You still have the same issues that you would with any other WordPress plugin. And if you've been used WordPress for a while, you know what those are. Every time they push out an update, you have to do the update. And then there could be problems. And in this particular update last week, if you came here when you registered, you tried to add it to your calendar, you might have gotten a white screen. That was a bug in the plugin itself. And so I emailed, or I put in a ticket to Webinar Ignition. I got an answer back within a few hours that said, thank you for letting us know. We've looked at your site. We realized this is a bug that came out in the last update, and we are going to get a fix to you as soon as possible. So that was great. It did take them a little bit longer than I would have liked, but you know, who knows what kind of technical hurdles they had to go through. But they did email me back and kept up with me until they pushed out the fix a couple days ago. And then I checked to make sure that it worked, and it sure enough, it did. So there's a question from Teach Good Stuff. Since this is a plugin, does it make your website run slower? And if so, is there something we can do about that? It has not made my website run slower. However, I did install this on a website where I wasn't doing anything else. The reason I did that is because I have, I test a lot of plugins. And so I as a rule, I don't test plugins on my live business website because there's a chance it could go down. So this has been on kellyphillips.biz, which is a website that I don't use at this point. But it is super fast. I have zero lag and zero problems. I don't see, thinking about the functionality of the plugin, I don't see any reason it would slow it down until you get to possibly a large amount of, like, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of attendees. You might see an issue with emails, and we're going to talk about emails in just a minute. That's probably the only thing I'm a little wary of, but I will explain all of that to you in just a second. But other than that, no, it doesn't seem to slow the website down one bit. And at this point, I would have no problem installing this on my main website. It has proven to me to be such a solid plugin that I don't feel that that's a big risk. Okay, so I'm not going to go through every part on here because it's much the same as what you just saw, and I don't want to waste your time. You have a headline, a thank you message area, which is the same as what we saw where you can put a video and a photo. Grab the webinar URL, and there's a share and unlock gift. Now this is actually a nice feature to help create buzz. If you do the share unlock, you could have some sort of a free download, a piece of software, whatever you give away for free, just a PDF doc. And if anybody shares on any of these platforms, they will automatically unlock and be able to download that PDF. So it's a great way to get people to share and come to your webinar. So let's see what else we've got on here. There we go. You've got a mini countdown, which was also part of the issue that I had with the calendars. The mini countdown was also not working, but it should be working now. And you can set up text reminders. So I don't have that connected, but you can set up the service so that it sends text reminders to folks. And this is just the headline and things for that. What are the chat options? That's awesome because we're going to head there right now. So those are on the live webinar page. And the live webinar page is going to look like a couple different things. Before you flip the webinar to live, and I'll show you how to do that when we talk about actually running the webinar, the live webinar page is a countdown page. So if somebody goes to it early, they're not going to see like a big empty black video box. They're going to see a countdown to the webinar, a click so that they could register. You could put any kind of copy on there. You could do the share piece. So it becomes a selling tool as well. And then once you flip the webinar to live, it flips over to the screen you guys are seeing now, which has the video and the chat embedded. So one of the things that you have to do, and you may consider this a downfall as well, but it's kind of what happens with these Google Hangouts. What you'll have to do is go start the Google Hangout on air through your G+ account, at least for the moment, until they decide to move Hangouts out of G+ for good. And then once you start it, you don't have to go on air. You just start it and open it. And then there is a link at the bottom. And you can grab the link, the share link, and pop it right in here and hit save. And once you do that, then your webinar is connected to the Webinar Ignition program. Now, you can do that maybe like 15 minutes before. and you still are not live on air until you hit the live on air button. But that is just how you make sure that the Google Hangout on Air is being shown through the page, okay? So you just have to remember to do that. I usually go 20 minutes ahead and make sure that my lighting looks good, my screen shares are working, all of that stuff. Okay, here's the question that Lisa just asked, the question and answer area. So built into Webinar Ignition is a question and answer area. And I did use this on one of my webinars. It was good, but I wanted to see a scrolling conversation. It just allows people to submit a question directly to the presenter, that only the presenter can see it, and then they can answer it. And there's a whole management tool, and I can show you that on the back end here in a minute. But if you want to do the chat service, you go to third-party service, and you have to go out and get a chat service. So I use Livefire. It's the one they recommend. It's free, so there's no extra expense, and it seems to work really well. The only reason I wasn't able to enter my comment is because, like I said, I neglected to actually log into Livefire on the other laptop where I had things up. So that is a user error, not an error in the system. So I just grabbed the embed code from Livefire and put it in here and saved it, and that's it. Any other service that does live chat, I cannot off the top of my head think of them, but there are quite a few. Anything that allows you to embed a chat in a web page, well, you can use this, as far as I know. You have some other options, inviting friends to the webinar, and then you have the live giveaway. So this allows you to also do kind of a free PDF download, something that people can get only if they actually come and show up live to the webinar. And that is great for encouraging people to come live, because in my experience, if you're trying to sell something, it's going to go better during the live webinar. I've gotten off a live webinar and gone and looked in my inbox to see all kinds of sales. And that same recording will run for the next 3 days, and I'll only get a couple sales trickling in. I don't know what it is about live, but live really makes a difference. Lisa says Chatwing. Chatwing's another chat box that you could use with this. Thank you, Lisa. Sorry, I had to take a little drink there. Okay. So again, these are things you can't do with regular Google Hangouts by themselves that are going to help make your webinar very, very successful. Okay, so that is it for the live webinar page. And again, you can make a live webinar page not using these templates, I believe. I have not tried it yet, so if I find anything on that, I will let you know. The webinar replay. This is pretty much like the live webinar page, but you can do some extra things on here. You can do a countdown for when the replay is expiring. You can do a timed action order button, so that you can push out an order link at a particular time in the webinar. That's why this is really nice, because let's say you get through the webinar, you get to your sales pitch. You can time it so that even if they're watching the recording, at that point when the sales pitch starts, up comes the link to go purchase. So that I really enjoy that. It's a good feature. And then if the webinar is closed, if you have it expiring out, you can put copy in here to direct people to your website or to purchase something else or wherever you would like them to go. So that's really it for the replay options. And then notifications. Okay, this was a little bit of a setup issue for me. Because you're using this right out of your website, you are actually going to have and I just thought about it, my passwords are probably in here, so I'm not going to scroll down too far, but you have an SMTP integration. So in the documentation for Webinar Ignition, it tells you to go to Mandrill, which is a free service, a free mass email service, and you can hook up and have all of the emails for your webinar sent through Mandrill. I was able to go through Bluehost. As you can see, I've got Bluehost set up. So if you have email through your host, you can go to get their SMTP settings and you can set it in here. And then the emails, notifications that come out for your webinar go through your host. One of the things you need to know is that due to security reasons, Bluehost has the ports that you're using only go one way. Emails can come in, but they can't go out. So you do have to call your hosting company and ask them to open ports. And that was really easy to do. We had no problem. And then this was up and running without any kind of an issue. And then you have all these emails, and the emails you got from me are the untouched ones. So I won't spend, going through all of these. I'll just show you maybe one. I didn't touch them. Oh, I did touch the sign up one. Let's go to one that I didn't adjust. Here we go. So webinar reminder goes live in 1 hour. That's just how it normally comes out, but you can come in and edit any of this. It's got codes in here so that this way, if the date changes somehow, it's pulling in all the dates by code and you don't have to remember to come update every single email. But you can edit these however you would like. You can also schedule these differently than the default that is on here. And then the status of the email. So all of these are the same, pretty much full editing rights. And then you can also edit the text reminder right here. So that is it for the emails. Let's see, is there a way to disable the initial get in on the conversation on Google Hangout pop-up? Yeah, I'm gonna look on that, Steph, because I would love to disable that. I've seen that confuse people on other webinars as well, because it takes you over to G+, because G+ isn't smart enough to know that you're using a webinar service. Like to Google, you're just doing a Hangout. So I'm going to look into that. I don't know of any way to disable it, but I'm going to look into it. If anybody on the line knows, feel free to chat and put it into the chat box for us. But yeah, that's a great suggestion to try to get that disabled. Okay, last couple things for extra settings, and then we're going to go and I'm actually going to show you the live interface. There are some things like time and date. You can change how it's displayed. Footer settings. Right now, it says webinar ignition in the footer of the page, and that is an affiliate link for me. So if you're going to purchase, feel free to click through that way. But you can take that out. It doesn't have to say webinar ignition. It could say your website name and have your website link. Oh, I think David knows a way to disable the Google conversations box. So good. Custom landing page settings. There's all kinds of things you can do. Meta info on your thank you page. Custom JavaScript and CSS. So if you're somebody who knows how to do CSS, you can go ahead and do that. Custom webinar page. This is all more technical issues that you don't have to get into. And then let me think, there is one that here's your footer code. So you can totally change what's in the footer and make it a little bit more salesy for you. Okay, so the emails didn't go out, and so I will have to check into that. I know that the email reminders have gone out for all of the other webinars that I've done. Because I got them myself. I signed up for those and got them myself. But it could be the issue that they were having with the calendar was also creating an issue with emails. So I will check into that and see. Again, one of the drawbacks to using a plugin is that if there are issues, they may not get found right away. Whereas with the service, they probably are going to get found a little faster. So I will check that out. Okay, thanks, David. He's gonna send me the instructions, and I will. I'll do a quick little video so everybody can see how to disable the join the conversation piece. So thank you, David. All right, so that's really it for setting up the webinar. It feels like really long, but it like I said, it didn't take that long to actually do it. Once you do it, now once you get ready to do the live webinar, you do what I showed you with the live page, where you go in and you place in the Google Hangout code once you get the Hangout started live. And then you can go to your members, not the members area. Go back to the dashboard. You can flip live. So this is your command. Now I'm back here on the main dashboard for this particular webinar. And it'll be in countdown mode until you're actually ready to go live. Then you flip it to live, and that's when people can start seeing the page and the video. And it will flip automatically. I did test this. When the countdown gets to 0, it will flip over automatically to be live. When I'm done with this, I will flip it over to replay. And then I will go grab the embed code for the replay off of YouTube, and I will pop it into the replay page. And that's it. That's all I have to do to get it to move to replay mode. Just click this and put the replay embed code on the replay page. Okay. So it's almost a letdown. It's so simple, to be honest. I'm like, that's it. That's all I have to do after all that. Okay, so you set up your webinar, people are signing up for it, and then you hit the time to go, and you hit Show Live Console, which I have open right here. Yes, Lisa, countdown mode was not working today, and it's probably part of the fix that they pushed out. It could be because I created this webinar before the fix was out, and so I'm going to check and see if I do a brand new webinar, if the countdown will start or not. So that's the drawback, unfortunately. Now you can see, and this is probably because if the notifications didn't go out, like you guys are telling me, I've only got 9 live viewers and 49 registrations. I have also found, though, that that is pretty normal, that a very small percentage of people will come to the live webinar. So anything you can do to encourage people to come live, I would definitely do, because as I said, my other experience is that people who come live tend to buy. People who watch the replay, it just trickles in. Now, my husband, I was telling my husband about this. He's not an entrepreneur. He has nothing to do with online business, but I thought this was a very brilliant observation. He said, well, wouldn't that be because the people who attend live are the most interested? I said, that's good, because if I sign up for a webinar, I try to attend, but I can't always. So I don't know. That could be why the live webinar works better. It may not be, it may just be a matter of level of interest. So this is what you see, and you can see this go up and down as people go on and off. You can see my total registrations today were just 49. And total questions and active questions, this is if you're using the Q&A feature that is built in versus using the chat that we have. Like I said, I much prefer the chat, but I'm noticing already, this is the second time I've done the live chat, it's harder for me as the presenter to keep up with the live chat. It's really easy for me. I don't think you'll be able to see. Let's try manage questions. Okay, so when a question pops through, it will come up right here, and then I have a button where I can mark it answered, and it disappears out of my view. So I can keep this screen really clear if I'm just doing the Q&A, whereas the live chat is scrolling. And if we had a lot more people on today, I would probably miss a lot of your questions because I'm looking at the screen in front of me and the chat will be scrolling by on my right. So that's where I think the Q&A has value. But I think most people like the conversation that you have in a live chat. I mean, what do you guys think as attending a webinar? Would you rather have a Q&A, like where you submit a question straight to the presenter and nobody sees it? Or would you rather have the rolling chat where you can interact with other people on the webinar? Go ahead and enter into the chat and tell me which way you like it. And then because there's a delay, we'll see those coming up in a second, or I will see those in a second, and I'll go ahead and move on so you guys don't have to sit and wait for it. So back to the console dashboard, you can also manage registrants. And I don't want to show anybody's personal information here, but you can see that you have your total leads, how many attended the live event. It does track who watches the replay. And then if you set it up, it will track purchases. So this is what helps you when you're using the replay later on to know who watched the webinar and purchased versus who just came across your offer and purchased, is that you can set up so that when they click through a link in the webinar, it will actually track it as a conversion and show you it as a purchase. One of the questions from Lisa is, can you do both the Q&A and the rolling chat? And you cannot. You can only do one or the other. Okay. So, and then this allows you to export all of your registration information to use as follow-ups. One other thing I really like about this is there's an on-air message. And again, there is going to be a little bit of a delay for this. But if I wanted to send you guys a message like, do you love webinar ignition? And then we could say, bye now. And then we could, that's not it. We could pop in the order link in here, which I don't have it right in front of me. And when I click save the settings, and the green button is on, so we should see There it is. You should see a buy now button right there under your screen. So this is the live version of that feature I talked about with the replays, where you can push out that button and encourage people to buy. I like this because I've seen webinars where there's a buy button right underneath the video and people get confused and click it. So this kind of gets everything out of their way, so they're focused on the webinar until you're ready for them to go take action. And then I can turn this off. And you'll see it turn off. So those are just some of the live things that you do. You have a nice little console here, and you can manage it from there. Now let me show you, I'm going to take off the screen sharing and just show you what I'm actually doing here at my desk. Okay. Hi, everybody. All right, so let me show you what my setup looks like. I'll try not to jostle you too much. How about that? Okay, so I'm here at my desk in my office, and I have a light up there just because it's a little grainy if I don't actually hold the light. Oh, I shake a lot, don't I? So I'm going to start on this side over here. I've got an extra laptop right there, and that's where I'm keeping an eye on the actual screen that you guys are seeing. So that's all in a delay. You can see that it's on a delay. There's my drink. Gotta have a drink when you're doing a webinar. This is the main computer that I'm running the webinar from, and this is where I'm screen sharing from as well. And then I have my microphone. This is the Blue Yeti. I love the Blue Yeti. If you want a slightly more economical option, the Blue Snowball is really just as good for webinars. The Yeti is actually almost too sensitive. It'll pick up sounds from other places in my house if I'm not careful. But the Snowball is good as well, and it's a little cheaper. And then you can see I have the actual live Hangout on that screen. This is just a monitor, and I have my laptop. That laptop is just extended out onto the large monitor. And that's how I work normally every day, is with these two screens. The third laptop is just a backup laptop that I use when I teach live classes and stuff. I always take an extra laptop in case anybody needs it. And for stuff like this. So that is my setup. You don't need to have an extra computer. I do recommend 2 screens if you can possibly do it. You know, it does help to have the double screen so you can kind of see the behind the scenes and do the screen sharing at the same time. And if you need to stop and look at what's going on, you're not necessarily showing your whole screen to everybody. So I find that to be pretty useful. Okay, just checking for questions over there on that other laptop. Now you know what my Star Trek console here looks like, right? Okay, so, you know, here's the bottom line, I think. I like Webinar Ignition for $97. So it's $97 for one website. And then if you want to put it on multiple websites, it goes up. I think it's $197 for 3 websites. That's what I have. It's the same functionality as far as I know. It's just that you can put it on 3 different websites. You have a license for that. Or you can get like the developer unlimited version. And then if you're a web designer, you could resell it to clients. So I believe those are the 3 options. You know, I like this. Part of it though is that I'm a WordPress designer, and so I can handle plugin issues. You know, if there's an update, I know not to apply an update right before a webinar, right? So if an update had come out yesterday, it would just be sitting there undone because I'm not going to risk having a functionality issue right before I give a webinar. But I also know how to do some basic plugin troubleshooting. So that is something to consider if you're going to purchase this versus, you know, some of the other options that use Google Hangouts. Also, support is good. I had 2 issues on setup, and we'll talk about setup a little bit next. They helped me instantly. Like, well, there was a few hours, you know, from when I put in the ticket to when they got back, but they were very helpful. I've had no problems with that. The only problem I've had in the 3 months that I've had it is, like I said, that one update caused a problem with the calendars and the countdowns. And it looks like we may still have a countdown issue, but I'm going to try a brand new webinar and see if it's just a holdover because this was created first. So, you know, those are, I guess, maybe the cons or the drawbacks, is just you are a little more on your own in terms of immediate help. But if you're pretty familiar with WordPress and just how to do your basic troubleshooting, you should probably be okay with that and not have any issues. And that's really it. I mean, there are not a lot of drawbacks to this. Oh, auto webinars. So you can do auto webinars as well. And I have not done one yet, but like evergreen. So that's where like you pre-record it and then you put it out to play at a certain time. So this does have that capability as well. And I have a question. You don't worry about bandwidth for all the machines on a webinar. I use a browser-based webinar now, and they told me not to use another computer at the same time. Okay, yes, Lisa, that's actually, I'm really glad you asked that. So the laptop where I'm actually running everything from is hardwired into my account. The other one is on wireless. And I tested this thoroughly before I did it to make sure I had enough signal strength. So if you're going to do any kind of a Google Hangout, whether it's webinar or not, you definitely want to plug in. And I'll tell you how to do that, because at first it sounds overwhelming because we're not used to plugging our computers in anymore. You probably have a wireless router box somewhere in your setup, and there should be multiple ports on the back of it. And if you just get a data cable from Walmart or Staples or wherever, ask them what you need, they'll know. You can plug it into one of the ports on the back of your wireless router, and there should be either a port in your laptop, or if you have a newer laptop, you may have to get a hub. Let me see. I'm trying to think if I can show you this stuff without destroying anything here. Let me try to show you mine so you know what it looks like. So, geez, there, no, that's not it. Okay, this one right here. This is they call it a dongle, and I just got it from off Amazon, I believe, or you could get them from like Best Buy. And it's just a little plug where one end is a USB port and the other end is where the data cable goes in, because this is a newer laptop that I have and it does not have a plug for the data cable. So I just had to get this thing. I think it was less than $10. I would recommend getting a fairly decent quality one, because a low quality dongle is not going to give you as good of a signal. And you want the signal going through there to be super strong so that you can handle the streaming video. But it has worked out really well for me. But those are definitely things you need to test before you move on. Okay, yeah, if you got the wireless laptop. So I would just test it and just make sure that that your signal can handle it. Mine seems to be able to handle it. We have like Time Warner cable, so I don't know. They seem to do a pretty good job at that stuff. So let's see. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Let me look at my list here. Yeah, so the biggest drawbacks, I went ahead and made a list of drawbacks because, like I said, I'm not trying to sell this to you. This is a review, and I want you to know the good things and the bad things, because that's my job. So Google Hangouts have a delay. The third-party chat may also have a delay. So you could potentially get yourself into a situation where the delay from the Google Hangouts and the delay from the chat causes an issue together, which could get ugly. The templates are not that great, but you can create your own, and you can put some work into customizing them. So, you know, that's kind of a so-so drawback. And then your regular plugin frustrations that, you know, they're going to push out updates. There could be a problem with that update. And then if you do have this on your main website, you could have plugin incompatibilities. And anybody who uses WordPress knows that that is definitely an issue. So you may want to look at having a subdomain that you run these off of. If you have a hosting account that allows unlimited websites, that's not an issue. I know Bluehost allows unlimited websites. Some of the other great ones do. So in that case, you know, installing WordPress on a subdomain and putting this on there could potentially protect you from issues happening, or at least reduce the likelihood. Like I said before, though, I do, after seeing this run for a couple of months now, I feel completely comfortable with putting this on a live website that has other stuff. I would, of course, take my normal precautions, like backing up the website before you load a new plugin, and keeping everything updated so that there's less chance of things breaking. Let's see. Do we have any other questions? David just gave us a bunch of stuff. Yeah, he's talking about the hardware. You guys can probably read it as well. You can always call your provider. If you feel like you don't have enough bandwidth, you can call your provider and ask them if there's anything they can do. I have seen situations where a provider will come out, like a cable, at least for cable, and they will put a booster on your line so that you have a little extra. So if you find that you generally have a weak signal, it could be just because you're the last in the line of houses in your neighborhood. And so they can boost your signal with things like that. But don't hesitate to call them and complain and find out what they can do to make it better. Yep. And Lisa says, I've got a business connection. I'm covered. Exactly. Okay, good. All right. So I'll wait just another minute. If there's any more questions, go ahead and pop them in right now because again, we're on a little bit of a delay. And so I want to make sure you get your questions in. If there's anything else I can answer for you about this plugin. Again, I really like it. I think the cost is amazing. That $97 is one time. That is not a year. That is not a month. That is a one-time charge. They also have a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you do try it, now that you've seen it and decide you want to give it a shot and you decide you don't like it, they do have that guarantee. If you have any pre-sales questions, you can go to their support area and submit a ticket, and they will ask those. I can answer basic questions, but I'm not, like I said, I'm not affiliated with the company. I'm not a salesperson, so I can't really give you any nitty-gritty stuff that isn't already documented that you could read yourself. So I highly recommend submitting a support ticket for pre-sales questions if you have any. And also, if you will, again, if you're planning on purchasing, if you feel generous at no cost to you, you can click through my affiliate links. Any of the links for Webinar Ignition here in the webinar, I've programmed my affiliate link in, but if not, that's okay because I totally understand. And other than that, I just thanks for coming. I really appreciate that you're here for my live plugin review. I hope you enjoyed it and got something very useful out of it. And hopefully I'll see you guys around on Facebook and on my blog, wpplugincoach.com. All right, thanks and have a wonderful day.